Oh, hi there. The moment that you stop seeking clarity is the moment that you can start living a real life and becoming dangerous. Maybe not dangerous, but that sounded kind of cool. Um, there are so many people in life that waste their whole life seeking clarity. They don't take any action because they think that before they can take the action, they need to find this mystical thing called clarity, where they'll have complete omniscience, complete understanding. They'll know exactly what they need to do. They'll understand every step of the way on whatever journey is about to unfold for them. Well, life isn't like that. And so a lot of people, they seek clarity, but they never find it. Not because there's something wrong with them, but because their understanding of life is wrong. That's what this video is going to talk about. So before we get too deep into this video, of course, clarity is an actual thing. You can have clarity about something more than something else. You can understand your next steps. You can clean your dirty windows and suddenly they become more clear. So there is a thing called clarity. The problem is, so many people go on these transformational journeys trying to improve their lives, and they get stuck at the starting post, whatever you call it, because they think that they need clarity about where they're going to go before they get anywhere. And then they get so worked up digging inside themselves and asking themselves all these deep questions and so on and so forth, that they waste all of their time and never take any action because they have a misunderstanding about what clarity is. They think they can get to a point of omniscience where they have all of the answers, and suddenly every little step of the way is going to be revealed to them, and they'll have a map with 1,000 different steps. It's going to show them all of the territory that they need to traverse as they move forward. And of course, that can't happen because the reality that we found ourselves in as human beings is a fragmented universe, and we are fragmented creatures. And so we will always have gaps in our knowledge, and there will always be periods of uncertainty, and there will always be things that we can't control. And so no matter who you are, or how much inner work you do, or how much coaching you get, or anything, you're never going to get 100% conceptual clarity about the path forward. And so if you think that is something that you're going to get, then you're just going to end up wasting your time and you're going to confuse yourself more. And even worse than that, you're just going to get more and more lost under the influence of the ego, because the ego is the opposite of reality. And all of these things that we do as we seek this crystal clear clarity that can exist are a denial of reality. And so when you deny reality, you just end up avoiding, you end up distorting, you end up resisting, and you get lost in the ego. In short, we can say that the truth is that clarity isn't something that you seek before you get started and you go out there and start taking action. It's something that you get after doing that. It's a byproduct of taking actions that are real to you. And if you get caught up in this quest for clarity, where you're trying to reassure yourself basically that you can take the actions that you need to take, then all that ends up happening is you confuse yourself because you never go out there in the world and take any kind of action and do the things that you need to do in order to get the byproducts of actual clarity, which comes from the hindsight of learning, from seeing who you actually are, what's real about you and what's not in the way that you identify based on the evidence that you get from the actions that you take, and how that evidence can help you dissolve unreal stories and validate the real things about you. You miss out on all of that stuff. And if you miss out on all that stuff, then you don't know what next step to take, and then you don't know what next step to take after that, and so on and so forth. And so it's not so much about figuring everything out before you get started and start taking action. It's about taking the action that makes the most sense to you, learning from that, and going deeper and deeper into a process of growing as you learn by doing. You can't learn everything before you get started because all of the things that you're going to be thinking are just going to be based on your current way of identifying your ego and the version of yourself that you are on the start of the journey. So if you're trying to go from here to here, the version of you that starts the journey is going to be a slightly different version to the one that finishes the journey. Because as you go through the journey, you're going to learn things, you're going to let go of things that don't serve you, you're going to acquire new skills and qualities and all that kind of stuff. And you can't think yourself into that. And so the only way to get clarity is to start as this version of yourself, who you are right now today watching this video, figure out your next move, which may or may not be right. It actually doesn't matter, which I'll explain in a second. And then as you move forward through a process of action, each action that you take is going to give you more clarity, which is going to allow you to refine your relationship with yourself, the world, and life itself. And through doing that, it's basically a process of moving towards wholeness, letting go of fragmentation, and becoming more real and understanding the truth about yourself and life, which is what real clarity is. This being the case, you can actually get a lot of clarity from any kind of action, even the wrong kind of action. The wrong action, basically meaning at this stage, action that doesn't actually even lead to a place that you want to go to in the long run. But right now, it seems like it has the potential to take you somewhere. As long as you're taking some kind of action and you're doing something, you're going to learn from life. And as you learn from life, you're going to get more understanding about who you are, more understanding about what life is, what works for you, what you actually want, what you don't want. And so instead of overthinking and trying to figure out all this stuff before you get started, you can just go out there and do something that kind of makes sense. Of course, in an ideal world, you would be strategic. You wouldn't just do random things. You would do something that is aligned with your values. It's aligned with goals that you might have, but you don't know how to achieve yet. Something that is aligned with hobbies that you have or skills that you have or whatever it is. There's some actions that you can take, and right now they make sense to you, that whether it eventually feeds into the long-term vision of your life or not, is going to show you who you are. Maybe you're going to take a course of action and you realize, okay, this is not for me. Even in that case, you're still going to end up with more clarity overall because now you know that that is not for you. And so you might have to go through this process a few times. You might have to keep reiterating and coming up with new ideas. But eventually you'll get to the point where you've tried a couple of things and you're like, okay, this is not for me. That's not for me. That's not for me either. But I'm learning more about myself in the process. I'm learning that I actually have no interest in X whatsoever, but it's starting to reveal an interest in Y. And now I can start pursuing this. And over time, you're going to get to the point where the next step is going to get you to a place where you feel like you've achieved something. And that is going to reveal another step and then another step and then another step. And so the point is, you don't need, again, to figure it all out in your head, which is impossible because what's in your head right now is limited by who you are right now. You need to go out there and learn by doing, because as you learn by doing, you always get more information about reality, which teaches you more about the truth. And the more you understand about the truth, the more actual clarity you have. The other elephant in the room when it comes to this clarity stuff is that a lot of people who say that they're seeking clarity are actually only saying that because they've given up on whatever it is that they know deep down that they really want. Maybe they've given up on it because they think it's too difficult to achieve. They have self-limiting beliefs of some kind. They have been shamed. They might have trauma. They might feel guilty. They have fear. It could literally be anything, but there's something going on that has caused them to give up on themselves. And so instead of facing that stuff that has caused them to do that, they give into the ego, the little box that they've created for themselves to live in, which keeps all that real stuff hidden down there in the shadow territory. And then they try to find a substitute for what they really want, which they can kind of live with. And the quest for that substitute is what they call clarity. They're looking for something that they can do with their lives that's going to allow them to stay in their comfort zone, keep the ego where it is, and not have to do all of the work to become whole. But when you live like that, you just end up being split from yourself, becoming more and more fragmented, and you take yourself out of the natural drive towards wholeness that we all share. And then you just end up living in the void, which means you're always going to have that restless feeling. There's always going to be an itch. And that substitute is never going to satisfy you. When you live like this, it's kind of like being an eagle and volunteering to go live in a chicken coop, or being a wolf and then going to stay in a dog kennel. Your real nature is just being circumscribed and boxed off and limited for no real reason. And we call that clarity, not because it's actual clarity. It just makes us feel safe because really we're scared to face ourselves. There's a really famous quote by Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he said, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." In a way, when we seek clarity in this ego-driven way, because we're avoiding the truth about ourselves and life, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to adjust ourselves instead of expressing ourselves and acting on something real. And when we do that, we're never ever going to feel like we're living a real life. We do it because we're scared to face our shadow self. The ego that I keep talking about, the little box that we live in, is just a conceptual filter that we identify with, but it's not real. It's just an idea that we have picked up about ourselves in order to survive and feel comfortable. But the payoff of that, or the cost of that, is that all of the real things about ourselves that are actually going to give us a direction to move in and are going to pull us towards where we want to be, which is to that sense of wholeness, are going to be disconnected. They're going to be out of reach, and we're just never going to feel like we're doing anything real, which is ironically why we feel like we need clarity in the first place. And so really, if you want to get clarity, you need to start taking action in a way that is going to move you step by step in a realist, in the way that makes the most sense, like I was saying earlier. But it's also going to bring the shadow self to the surface so you become more integrated. And then you won't need clarity because you'll just be doing what you need to do. All you can really do is live and act in such a way where you keep stripping away all of the layers of fragmentation and conditioning and bullshit and self-hypnosis that you've picked up over the years so that you can let go of anything unreal and start to step back into something that is real. The short version of real versus unreal is you're either living in a fragmented way, a conceptual way, where you're putting yourself in this little box. Well, I don't know why I keep doing this charades thing. Or you're letting go of that and you're kind of surrendering to life as it actually is. You're still taking action, like I keep saying, that's the most important thing. You learn from the actions that you take. You get clarity as a byproduct of those actions, but you also want to take action in such a way where as you do move forward, you are consciously becoming more real because you're letting go of all that stuff, the fragmentation, the self-limiting beliefs, the fear, all those things that keep you in the ego in the first place, and that make you feel like you need clarity. The 3 steps that will help you on this journey that we're talking about in this video are always the same. It's the same 3 steps I always use with my coaching clients: awareness, acceptance, and action. Awareness means that you deconstruct the ego. Acceptance means that you start to integrate the shadow. And action means that you learn to trust yourself and trust life, which we'll get into in a second. In the case of clarity, no matter how much you go through any of these processes, you are never, ever, ever going to have full conceptual clarity. You might have experiential clarity in the sense that you know what you need to do. You have a compass that's going to pull you forward. You can tell the difference between what's real and what's not real when it comes to taking action. But conceptually, you'll never understand everything because that's literally impossible. And part of this journey of growing real, which is what my channel is about and what I work with my coaching clients on, is that you need to embrace your limits. It's about humility, understanding that there are certain limits in life, which some of us don't want to hear because we live in a culture where we're all supposed to be limitless and we can do literally anything. But paradoxically, the more that you accept your limits, the natural limits, the more powerful you become because you release unnecessary friction from your life and you can get into a sense of flow. And so when you get into that sense of flow, that's when you realize you don't actually need clarity because you're constantly working from moment to moment to be more responsive to life. You're not just reacting to everything based on a little plan in your head or a little map. You are the map and life is the map and you kind of become one and you merge with them. So anyway, when it comes to awareness, acceptance, and action, in the case of clarity, awareness means deconstructing the ego. It means looking at all the parts of you mentally and emotionally that are holding you back from taking the action that you need to take. What is causing you to believe that you need all of this clarity in the first place before you'll even get started? You will see that there'll be some emotional block, usually shame, guilt, trauma, fear, or maybe your way of identifying currently because of the ego stuff simply doesn't match who you suspect you're going to become if you start doing what you know you really need to do because of the shadow stuff that's buried beneath the surface. For example, maybe right now you have some kind of a business or whatever it is, and that requires you to be very kind of gung-ho, very yang with your energy, always on it, a human doing. But you realize that deep down inside you, you have kind of some creative impulse or something. And if you act on that, then you're going to have to slow down. Just an example, right? But if you slow down, you don't know who you are anymore because you're so used to identifying with just doing things for the sake of it and being a human doing instead of a human being. Things like that are the kind of things that you need to become aware of, because they're the things that are making you feel like you need clarity. Once you've got awareness, you need acceptance, which is in kind of simple based on everything we talked about. It's just getting an understanding of what's emerging from the shadow. You can spend years and years and years doing shadow work. This is another thing that people get obsessed with. You could spend your whole life digging down there and seeing what's hidden. You don't need to do that, actually. All you need to really do is see what's emerging, what is coming up. Maybe there is some creative impulse. Maybe there's an idea that keeps niggling away in your brain that you can't get rid of. You need to act on that, because guaranteed, pretty much, that is something from your unconscious that is trying to get your conscious attention, because it knows, or you know deep down, that if you follow through with that, you're going to become more whole, which is what this is all about. And then action, which of course you really need at every level, but in this case, in the awareness, acceptance, action model, action means two things. It means trusting yourself and trusting life. Trusting yourself to do what you need to do. So in the example I just gave, if something is emerging from the shadow, you have to trust yourself to go with that. You might have emotional resistance. You might feel like it's going to be painful, or you're going to face some old stuff, or whatever it is. You have to trust yourself to be able to handle that, and to handle whatever else happens externally on the way there, which you will be able to do. But at the same time, we're living in a reality where human beings can't control everything. We're not omniscient. We're not omnipotent, like you keep saying. And so you're going to have to trust life eventually, because not everything is under your control. You're going to take as much action as you can take, but eventually it will get to that point where you don't know what to do. So you're going to have to trust life as you ride through uncertainty. You wait for that next step to become clear. If you can do that, go through awareness, acceptance, and action, you'll get to this point that I'm talking about, where you're in the flow and you're not thinking your way from life. You're not thinking your way through life. You're just being in life and doing what you need to do, but not doing things for the sake of it. And ultimately, you get the real kind of clarity, which is discernment. You know what kind of actions you need to take, but you know what's real and you know what's unreal. And so instead of just doing things for the sake of it, or not doing the things that you should be doing, or sending yourself on a wild goose chase, you know what's real because you've done that work, and the shadow and the ego are pointing in the same direction, and that's the direction that you start to move in. The opposite of trust is fear. F-E-A-R. False evidence appearing real. If you look at what we talked about in this video as a kind of journey, we're going from a point of seeking clarity to a point of just not seeking and just flowing. Here, at the start of the journey, the only reason we're seeking that clarity is because we have fear. False evidence appearing real. We're seeing all kinds of barriers to where we want to go, all kinds of impossibilities, all kinds of limits that are not real, all kinds of bullshit, basically, right? And we get to this point where we trust and we're flowing. The opposite of fear is trust. And if you can live with trust instead of fear, which means that you're taking action and you're getting clarity from the actions instead of trying to find clarity before you act, then that's when life becomes more real. So that was a video about why clarity and the quest for clarity is kind of a lie, it's kind of redundant. And if you can give that up, you can kind of become dangerous, because it sounds cool, but dangerous in the sense of not being held back by the world, not being held back by yourself, just doing what life is calling you to do and what the shadow needs you to do, so you can become real again, or more real, instead of being held back by the ego, the little box, and all of the nonsense and bullshit and limiting beliefs and everything else, the self-hypnosis that stems from it. We don't need clarity. We need action based on what we currently think is real, that is going to show us what's actually real. And the more that we do that, the more discernment we get. We can discern what's real from what's unreal, and we can put ourselves on a path of building momentum and flow, because we're just taking action that is aligned with what's actually inside us, the vision that we can kind of surmise from that, which again may not be a perfect vision, but we'll learn more and more as we move towards it. And then instead of seeking clarity and getting stuck in the ego and avoiding reality, we're going to live in a life that feels real, because it is real, because we're working with life instead of against it. Something like that. So I hope that helps you. If anyone wants to talk to me, I can help you to live in a real way, to figure out what you want to do, to move forward and to take action that's real. If you want to talk to me, you can book a call on my website, ollyanderson.co.uk/talk. My new book is called Trust. It's about living in this trustful way that I'm talking about. doing your best and letting go of the rest. You can get that on my website as well. There's a little image up here. But it's ollieanderson.co.uk/trust, or you can read it on Amazon, or buy it on Amazon. And that's pretty much it. So I hope this video helped you. Stay real out there. Life is amazing. All you got to do is take the action that makes sense and then figure out the next step when the next step shows itself. Peace.